The driver's license felt wrong in his hands. Too new, too perfect, with a name that wasn't his own. Michael Rodriguez. That's who Ramiro Valdés was supposed to be now. The plastic card gleamed under the fluorescent lights of the dingy motel room, complete with New Mexico address he'd never seen and a birthday that made him 3 years older. In the photo, his own face stared back, but everything else was a lie. He should have known then. Should have listened to the voice in his head screaming that legitimate jobs don't come with fake identities. But desperation has a way of silencing intuition, and after 6 weeks of sleeping in storm drains and eating from dumpsters, he was ready to believe anything that promised a paycheck. The man who'd given him the ID sat across the rickety table, gold chains catching the light as he leaned back in his chair. They called him El Jeef, though he looked more like an accountant than a boss. Soft hands, clean fingernails, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He'd found Ramiro at the day labor pickup spot, had watched him work construction for 12 hours straight without complaint, had approached with an offer too good to refuse. A warehouse job, legal papers, steady income, housing included. All he had to do was become Michael Rodriguez. The journey that led to that motel room had started 3 months earlier in Tegucigalpa, where the gangs had given him an ultimatum: join or die. At 23, he'd already buried 2 brothers who'd made the wrong choice. His mother had sold her wedding ring to buy his bus ticket north, kissing his forehead at the station like she knew she'd never see him again. The crossing itself was a blur of desert heat and border patrol searchlights. He'd paid his last $1,000 to a coyote who abandoned the group halfway through Arizona. Those who survived the 3-day walk emerged like ghosts in Albuquerque, scattered to the winds before immigration could catch up. For 6 weeks, he'd lived like an animal, sleeping wherever darkness found him, working jobs that paid cash under the table, if they paid at all, learning that being undocumented meant being invisible, meant having no recourse when employers stole wages or cops demanded bribes. He'd lost 30 pounds and most of his faith in humanity. Then El Jeef appeared like a guardian angel with a proposition. The warehouse job was real, he promised. Import-export business on the outskirts of Santa Fe. The fake ID was just for payroll purposes. Lots of companies did it, he said. They needed workers who wouldn't ask questions, who'd show up on time and keep their mouths shut. In exchange, they provide a real apartment, real wages, a chance at a real life. Ramiro stared at the ID card, at this stranger named Michael Rodriguez who had his face. His mother hadn't raised him to be a liar, but she also hadn't raised him to starve. He took the card. The apartment was everything El Jeef promised. Small but clean, with running water and a lock that actually worked. After weeks of homelessness, it felt like a palace. He spent his first night just turning the lights on and off, marveling at having electricity he didn't have to steal. The refrigerator came stocked with food. The closet held work clothes in his size. Even a cell phone waited on the kitchen counter, already activated under Michael Rodriguez's name. For 3 days, he allowed himself to believe the fairy tale. He reported to the warehouse each morning, loading and unloading trucks with a crew of silent men who avoided eye contact. The work was hard but honest, or so it seemed. Boxes of electronics, furniture, auto parts. Nothing suspicious. Nothing that explained why everyone seemed so nervous, why conversations died when supervisors walked by. On the 4th day, everything changed. He was eating lunch alone, as usual, when El Jeef appeared in the break room. The soft-handed man wasn't smiling anymore. 2 others flanked him, men with prison tattoos and dead eyes who looked like they'd hurt people for less than minimum wage. El Jeef sat down across from him, sliding a car key across the table. There was a package that needed delivering, he explained. Special delivery. Off the books. The address was already in the GPS. All he had to do was drive, drop it off, come back. Simple. Ramiro's sandwich turned to ash in his mouth. He knew what this was. Had known, maybe, from the moment they handed him someone else's life. But knowing and admitting were different things, and he'd been so desperate to believe in second chances. He tried to refuse politely. Said he didn't have a license, forgetting for a moment about the fake ID in his wallet. El Jeef's companions moved closer, casual but unmistakable. One cracked his knuckles. The other played with something in his pocket that might have been a knife. El Jeef's voice stayed conversational, almost friendly, as he explained the situation. They'd invested in him. The apartment, the job, the identity, none of it was free. He owed them, and people who owed El Jeef always paid, one way or another. The beating was methodical, professional. They avoided his face. Couldn't have Michael Rodriguez showing up to work with visible bruises. But ribs were fair game. Kidneys, too. They worked him over in a warehouse bathroom, muffling his screams with a dirty rag, making their point with fists and feet. When they were done, he could barely stand. El Jeef straightened his tie, helped him to his feet almost gently. This was just a warning, he said. Next time they'd use different tools. Next time they'd know where to find his mother in Honduras. That's how they sealed it. Not with threats to him, but to her. They had her address, photos of her house, her daily routine. Modern technology made it so easy to reach across borders, to touch lives thousands of miles away. All it would take was one phone call. He took the car key. The package sat in the trunk of a 10-year-old Honda Civic, wrapped in black plastic and duct tape. He didn't need to open it to know what was inside. The weight, the shape, the way his hand shook as he loaded it. Some knowledge comes without words. The GPS led him through Santa Fe's tourist districts, past adobe churches and art galleries where people paid thousands for paintings of the desert. His ribs screamed with every turn. Blood from a split lip painted the steering wheel. In the rear-view mirror, he caught glimpses of Michael Rodriguez's face, already learning to wear another man's name. The delivery address was a McMansion in the foothills, all marble columns and security cameras. He was supposed to leave the package by the back gate, ring the bell, walk away. Don't look back. Don't deviate. Don't think about what happens next. But thinking was all he could do, about the package in the trunk, about what it contained and who it would destroy, about his mother, safer now in her little house, unaware that her son's choices could kill her from 2,000 miles away. He was 3 blocks from the destination when he saw the police car. It appeared in his mirrors like a shark's fin breaking water, maintaining perfect following distance, not close enough to seem aggressive, not far enough to be coincidence. His heart hammered against his broken ribs as he fought the urge to run. Michael Rodriguez had no warrants. Michael Rodriguez was a legal resident. Michael Rodriguez had nothing to fear. But Ramiro Valdés was driving with enough drugs to put him away for a decade. The cop followed for 6 blocks. 7, 8. Every traffic light felt like an eternity. Every stop sign was an opportunity for those lights to flash, for the nightmare to begin. He could see the officer's face in the mirror. Young, alert, probably running the plates through his computer. On the 9th block, the lights came on. Time slowed to honey. The siren wailed like a funeral dirge. Other cars pulled aside, leaving him exposed in the middle of the lane. Nowhere to run. The package in the trunk seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Or maybe that was his own blood roaring in his ears. He had seconds to decide. Pull over and face prison. Run and face bullets. Either way, El Jeef would reach his mother. Either way, Michael Rodriguez was finished before he'd barely begun. His foot found the accelerator. The Honda lurched forward like a startled animal. In the mirror, he saw the cop's surprised face, the scramble for the radio. Then he was flying through a red light, horns blaring, pedestrians scattering. The engine screamed in protest as he pushed it past its limits. More sirens joined the chorus. The quiet streets of Santa Fe erupted into chaos. He took corners on 2 wheels, sideswiped parked cars, jumped a curb to avoid a roadblock. The GPS kept trying to recalculate, that calm electronic voice still directing him to McMansion like nothing had changed. He needed to dump the package, needed to disappear, needed to become someone else again, someone neither El Jeef nor the police could find. But first he needed to survive the next 60 seconds. A police SUV appeared ahead, trying to cut him off. He yanked the wheel hard left, tires shrieking, and found himself in a residential neighborhood. Kids playing in yards, mothers pushing strollers. He slowed despite himself, unwilling to add innocent blood to his sins. That moment of humanity cost him. The pursuing cars closed the gap. A helicopter appeared overhead, spotlight piercing the afternoon shadows. They had him boxing, choreographing his capture like a deadly ballet. He saw the park entrance and made his choice. The Honda jumped the curb and plowed through the chain-link fence. Soccer players dove aside as he carved across the field, kicking up dust clouds. The police cars followed but struggled on the soft ground. He had seconds, maybe less. At the far end of the park, a concrete drainage canal cut through the earth. He slammed the brakes, skidding to stop at the edge. The trunk popped open. He grabbed the package, heavier than death, worth more than life, and hurled it into the murky water below. It sank without a trace. When the cops dragged him from the car moments later, he was almost smiling. They'd find nothing. Michael Rodriguez was clean. Whatever happened next, at least he wouldn't be trafficking poison to destroy more lives. The interrogation lasted 18 hours. They knew he'd thrown something, had the helicopter footage, the witness statements. But without the package, they had nothing solid. No drugs meant no trafficking charge. Just evading arrest, reckless driving, destruction of property. Bad, but not life-ending. They ran Michael Rodriguez through every database. The ID was perfect. Too perfect. It led nowhere, connected to nothing, a ghost in the system. They knew it was fake, but couldn't prove it. Couldn't even prove his real name. Immigration got involved. Homeland Security, too. Everyone wanted a piece of the mystery man who'd led half of Santa Fe's police force on a wild chase. But without fingerprints in the system, without documents or cooperation, they were stuck. He gave them nothing. Not his real name. Not LG's location. Not a word about the warehouse or the beating or the threats to his mother. Prison was survivable. Deportation he could handle. But talking meant death for the only person who'd ever loved him unconditionally. They held him for 3 weeks while lawyers argued and paperwork multiplied. The charges kept changing: criminal impersonation, false identification, suspected trafficking. But nothing stuck solid enough for real time. Even the prosecutor seemed frustrated, knowing he was dirty but unable to prove it. Finally, exhausted and out of options, they offered a deal: voluntary deportation. Sign the papers, accept a 10-year ban from the U.S., and walk away. No trial, no prison, no questions asked. Just disappear and never come back. He signed as Michael Rodriguez one last time. The bus ride to the border took 16 hours. He sat shackled between a woman who'd been caught working with fake papers and a man who'd missed an asylum hearing. Everyone had stories. Everyone had reasons. Everyone was heading back to places they'd risked everything to escape. At the bridge in El Paso, they uncuffed him and pointed south. Mexico stretched out below, a country he'd never called home but would have to navigate. He had no money, no plan, no identity he could safely claim. Ramiro Valdés was dead to the authorities. Michael Rodriguez had never really existed. He was nobody, walking into nowhere. But he was walking, and somewhere in Honduras, his mother was safe. He crossed the bridge as the sun set, joining the flow of deportees and travelers heading south. Behind him, America glowed in the dying light, promise and poison wrapped in the same package. He'd tasted both in just 3 weeks, had learned that salvation and slavery could wear the same face, speak the same language, offer the same desperate hope. In Ciudad Juarez, he found a Red Cross shelter that didn't ask questions. They gave him a meal, a cot, 3 days to figure out his next move. He met others like him, ghosts of fake identities, survivors of American dreams turned nightmare. They shared stories and strategies, maps of Mexico's migrant routes, warnings about which towns to avoid. Some were planning to try again, wait a few months, find new coyotes, new routes, new names. The cycle eternal. But he was done with that game. Done being someone else's pawn, carrying someone else's poison, living someone else's lie. He called his mother from a payphone, keeping it brief. Told her he was alive. Told her he'd tried. Told her not to expect him home. LG's reach was long, and Honduras was too small to hide. She cried, but he could hear the relief too. Better a living ghost than a dead son. He found work in Juarez, washing dishes in a restaurant that catered to Americans crossing for cheap dental work. The pay was nothing, but it was honest. No packages, no fake names, no unthreatening families across borders. Just soap and water, and the simple dignity of earning without fear. Months passed. The bruises faded. The nightmares softened. He learned to live in the margins, neither here nor there, neither Ramiro nor Michael. Sometimes he'd see news from Santa Fe, drug busts, warehouse raids, bodies found in the desert. He wondered if El Jeef was still recruiting desperate men at day labor sites, still handing out perfect IDs with poison promises attached. He wondered how many took the deal, how many delivered the packages, how many mothers received phone calls in the night. The restaurant owner was a kind woman who'd been deported herself years ago. She knew his type, recognized the haunted look of someone who glimpsed America's shadow side. One day she offered him a chance to manage her second location. Better pay, a real apartment, a chance to build something. He almost said no. Trust came hard after El Jeef. But she wasn't offering him someone else's name, wasn't asking him to carry anything but his own weight. Just work, just life, just a chance to be himself again. Whoever that was now. He took the job. Slowly, carefully, began building a life that belonged to him, not Ramiro Valdés. That name was burned, connected to police reports and deportation orders. Not Michael Rodriguez. That ghost was better left buried. Someone new, someone who'd learned that names were just words, that identity went deeper than documents. But late at night, when sleep wouldn't come, he'd think about that package sinking into dark water, wonder what horrors he'd prevented, what lives he'd saved by refusing to complete that delivery. It wasn't much, one package among thousands, a drop in an ocean of poison flowing north. But it was something, in a world where desperate people became tools for others' greed, where survival meant compromising everything you thought you stood for. That one act of defiance meant something. He'd thrown away more than drugs that day, had thrown away his chance at the American dream, however twisted it had become. But he'd kept something more valuable. The knowledge that when tested, when beaten and threatened and given every reason to comply, he'd chosen to break the chain. The package was gone. Michael Rodriguez was dead. El Jeef's investment had sunk without return. And somewhere in Honduras, a mother still prayed for a son she'd probably never see again, never knowing how close she'd come to being leveraged in someone else's game. That was victory enough. In the shadowlands between nations, between identities, between what we dream and what we survive, sometimes the only win is refusing to be someone else's weapon. His name didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what he'd thrown away, and what he'd kept, and the truth that even fake people could make real choices. The restaurant grew busy as spring came to Juarez. American tourists flowed across the bridge, seeking bargains and adventure, most never knowing about the shadow economy that had nearly swallowed him. He served them with steady hands, took their orders in accented English, smiled at their jokes about Mexican prices. They saw what they expected, another anonymous brown face in a border town restaurant. They'd never know he'd once been Michael Rodriguez. Never know about the package, the chase, the choice that changed everything. To them, he was nobody special. And that was exactly who he wanted to be.